Hello children, welcome to SR Concepts, and in this video I'm going to start the next topic, that is the development of embryo from your chapter number 9. Uh, in the previous video we have discussed about the fertilization in human beings. We have discussed about the external and internal fertilization and also in vitro fertilization. So if we talk about development of embryo in human beings, we know that after fertilization the the egg is called the zygote, and the zygote is a single cell. Now this single cell of zygote starts undergoing cell division to make new cells. Gradually it starts moving towards the uterus inside the oviduct, and as it is moving towards the uterus, simultaneously it keeps undergoing cell division, so that when it reaches in the uterus it becomes a ball of multiple cell. This ball of multiple cells is called embryo. On reaching the uterus, this embryo gets embedded inside the wall of the uterus, and this process is called implantation. So as the embryo is attached to the uterus, it keeps developing by cell division, and when the embryo properly gets settled in the uterus, the mother is said to be pregnant. Dear students, inside the uterus the complete development of the embryo takes place, and the embryo develops into the baby. During the development process, there is a stage of the embryo in which all the body parts of the baby, like hands, legs, head, mouth, ears, these all things are visible or identifiable in the embryo. Such a stage of embryo is called fetus. So the complete development into the baby takes place in the uterus only, and finally the baby takes birth. When the embryo is attached to the uterus, there is a tissue known as placenta, which is actually a connection between the fetus or embryo and the wall of the uterus. So through this connection that is known as placenta, the embryo or the fetus is actually obtaining nutrition from mother's blood. Okay, now let's move on to the next slide. In this slide you will see that all the terms are given and all the notes are given. You can note down these notes by taking a screenshot or by pausing the video. So dear students, what we have studied about them, you know that fertilized egg is called zygote, and a ball of cells which is developed from the zygote is called embryo. Finally embryo gets embedded in the wall of the uterus. This process is called implantation, and when the embryo gets properly settled in the uterus, the woman is called pregnant. And what is fetus? It is a stage of the embryo in which all the body parts are clearly visible. Finally the baby takes birth. Right. So dear students, now we will talk about the embryonic development in chick also, right? So what is written here? Internal fertilization takes place in hens also. But do hens give birth to babies like human beings and cows? You know that they lay eggs. Okay, so let us talk about this. How are chick born? We know that internal fertilization takes place, but the hen gives egg. Dear students, how the egg is developed? Let's talk about this. So dear students, as you know that as the zygote develops into the embryo, it travels down the oviduct, and during this traveling many protective layers are formed around it. The hard and white shell that you see in hen's egg is one of such protective layers. When the shell is fully formed, the hen finally lays the egg. The embryo inside the shell takes about 3 weeks to develop into chick. So how long does it take? Around 3 weeks the embryo develops into a chick. And during this period, hen sits on the egg to provide sufficient warmth. So a particular warmth or particular temperature is required for the development of embryo in the chick inside the egg. So the hen sits on the egg to give them warmth. After the chick is completely developed, it bursts open the eggshell. We call that the chick hatches out of the egg, or we can say the eggs hatch and chick is born from them. So this is how the chick are born. Now we will talk about viviparous and oviparous animals. So dear students, in class 6 also we have discussed that viviparous animals are those animals which give birth to their young ones. Examples are the most of the mammals like cow, monkey, dogs, human beings. These all are viviparous animals. Now if we talk about oviparous animals, they are those which lay eggs, and the examples are frogs, lizards, butterfly or moth, hen, crow and many birds. Right. So dear students, these all are the examples of oviparous animals. Now let's move on to the next slide. That is young ones to adults. Right. Dear students, in butterfly and moth, if we talk about, there is a state known as larval state. So larva is formed in that process, and we can understand this formation of larva and then conversion. We will learn about the conversion of larva into adult one further in this chapter. Right. So this is the topic that is called young ones to adults. Right. So if we talk about young ones to adults, that means how a larva is formed and then larva is converted into the adult one. Dear students, the new individuals which are born or hatched out of the eggs continue to grow till they become adult. In some animals, the young ones may look very different from the adults. For example, if we talk about butterfly also, then the young one is very different. In the same way, you have also studied the silkworm. There also the young one, that is the caterpillar, is actually very much different from the adult one, right? So in the same way, frog is another such example in which the young one is very much different from the adults. So such young ones which are very much different from the adults are known as larvae. So what happens what happens in if we talk about silkworm, what happens that the egg develops into the larva or caterpillar, and then the larva develops into pupa, and finally pupa develops into the adults. So here you can see that the young one, that is larva, is very much different from the adult one. Now if we talk about the case of frogs, here also you will see that the young one, the egg develops into a young one that is called tadpole, and tadpole is actually very much different from the adult frog. How? Because tadpole is just like a fish. It has a tail and it has, you can see, the fins also, right? These help this larva to swim into water. So these larvae, that is called tadpole larvae of the frog, are actually just like fish, and they are moving in water just like fish. Now this tadpole gradually develops into the frog by drastic changes. So this change of a larva into an adult by drastic changes is called metamorphosis. So the topic that we are studying right now is actually metamorphosis. What happens? Let's read what is written here. The frog is another example in which the larva, in which the young one is very much different from the adult one. Observe the different stages of the frog starting from the egg to the adult stages. Here we have observed, right? We find that there are three distinct stages. First one, there is eggs. Second, there is the larva known as tadpole, and the third one is the adult. Don't the tadpoles look so different from the adults? But in human beings, if you talk about the young ones, then body parts similar to those present in the adults are present in at the time of birth. So in human beings, the young baby is actually very much similar to the adult one. So there is no such case of larva existing in human beings. So what is metamorphosis? How we will define this metamorphosis? The transformation of a larva into the adult through drastic changes is called metamorphosis. Alright, now we will talk about asexual reproduction. Dear students, we have already discussed that asexual reproduction is that in which there is no formation and fusion of gametes and in which only a single parent is involved in reproduction process. So dear students, we will discuss about a very tiny animal known as hydra, in which asexual reproduction takes place by the process called budding. Let's understand what is budding. Here you can see this is a parent hydra. So at the start of the budding process, what happens? A little outgrowth develops in the parent body of the hydra. This outgrowth is called bud, and this bud is actually a developing new individual organism, right? This bud gradually develops and starts to look like a hydra, and finally this is converted into a little baby hydra, and this little baby hydra gets detached from the body of the parent hydra and starts growing and developing into a new individual, means leads its life as a new individual. So here you can see only one parent larva can give birth to another, only one parent hydra can give birth to another hydra. So there may be actually more than one buds at a time in one hydra. So this process is called actually the budding. Now if we talk about the next one, now we talk about the next organism like amoeba, which is a unicellular animal, we can say, or unicellular organism, right? So in amoeba, asexual reproduction takes place by binary fission. What happens? There is a single parent amoeba. The nucleus of the parent amoeba divides into two. Finally, the whole cell divides into the two, and two new daughter amoebae are formed in the reproduction process. So because there are single cell is dividing into two new amoebae, so because of this is called binary fission. And this type of asexual reproduction takes place in many other unicellular organisms, like in bacteria also this process takes place. Alright friends, so this is what we have learned means about asexual reproduction. We have also learned about the asexual reproduction in plants in the previous class. So here your chapter comes to an end, and please make the notes from the video and take the screenshots, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and also share the video if you really like it. Thank you.